Hi all, welcome back. This video is going to be walking you through assignment 2. So as I said in the last video, these videos are not replacements for reading the instructions. The instructions do have other bits of details that are going to be useful for you, but I wanted to give you a sense of what it actually looks like to do the assignment, because I'm realizing there's maybe some disconnect that would be helpful for you to see me walking through these assignments. Now, the first thing that I'm assuming when you get to the R markdown part of the assignment is that you've done the beginning of the assignment. So my screen probably doesn't look exactly like yours, but I'm assuming you've done the beginning parts of assignment 2 and that you've gotten here where it's like, okay, I got to go read chapter 1, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing you're going to have to do is identify the variable name and label, but not value labels for row 2. And so this is where you hop over to the assignment 2 instructions to figure out how the heck you do that in R. So I am assuming coming into this assignment that you understand what we did in assignment 1, that you were able to create a basic R markdown file, that you can add headers like I've done here, that you can type some basic markdown like I've done here, and that you know how to like load in packages and use things like the here command. So the first thing you need to do is start a new R markdown file. I've already started mine, but if you've already forgotten, you go to new file, R markdown, you type in like assignment 2. Again, I kind of like this new like option of use current date when rendering document. I think this is in a newer version of RStudio than when I made the assignment. I think it's hella cool. And then set it to output to Word. But I've already done that. I've made my 2 headers for learning R markdown. I've done my disclaimer that says I did not lie, cheat, or steal on this. And because I haven't closed or opened RStudio, my working directory is still the same. Get WD. So I'm still in the right place that I need to be. If you've closed RStudio since you did the last assignment, you're going to want to open up your previous assignment. So like your assignment 1 to make sure that the working directory or the root directory where R thinks you're working from actually works. So the first thing we need to do is read in some data. And so to start that, I do part 1, assignment 1, part 2, assignment point 2, and then, oh no, I've done that already. Loading. I don't care terribly what your headers are called. 2.2. Let's say loading. Oops. There we go. See, I make lots of typos. It's just about seeing what your typos are. Now, as a reminder from last video, there's multiple ways you can insert a code chunk. You can literally manually type it. So backtick, 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 open brace, R will auto close for you, which is pretty nice. And then you have to end with 3 backticks, but then you can put like your code in here. That's kind of laborious. I don't like typing that much because I'm lazy. So you can either insert an R code chunk this way, or my favorite is I have a hotkey, which you can set under Tools, Modify Keyboard Shortcuts. Actually, my R chunk is the same. Insert chunk is Alt Command I. On a Mac, that's going to be Option Command I. So that's what I do. And so we need to start by loading in all of our libraries because if you've closed and opened RStudio again, you don't need to reinstall your packages, but you do need to load them up. R doesn't just load all of your packages because you would have an absolute hot mess. So based on the instructions for assignment, for assignment 2.2, step 3, part C, you need to load the following 3 packages: tidyverse, haven, and here. So library tidyverse. It's possible you didn't install tidyverse in assignment 2. So if you haven't, you can either install packages up here, remembering to put the name tidyverse in quotes. I'm not going to do this. You can also just run it here. And that way it's not saved in your R Markdown file. It just gets run in the console, and then it's kind of lost to the ether once you close out RStudio. So it's personal preference. If you do install libraries here, though, once you've run this command, comment this out so you don't reinstall it. So you need to load in the library tidyverse, library haven, and library here. Now you can run each line individually. You can also run this entire code block by pressing this button, run current code chunk. There is also, because there is for everything, there is a hotkey to run an entire code chunk. And I'm about to see if I remember what it is. I think it's Command-Shift-Enter or Control-Shift-Enter if you're on a Windows. Yep. You see it loads all the way down. That green just shows you where in your code you are. You'll notice that tidyverse is very vocal. So what it's telling you here is that when you load in this library tidyverse, what you're actually doing is attaching and loading all of these packages. So you've got ggplot, purd, dplyr, stringer, forcats, reader, tidier, and tipple. These are all libraries within the tidyverse package. You also have some what are called conflicts. So for instance, the package dplyr covers out like the filter argument. So we don't need to deal with this now, but that's what all of this nonsense means. It's not an error. This will happen every time you load tidyverse. It's just telling you things. It's not complaining to you. It's not telling you that something has gone wrong. Okay, so now we need to read data into R. Insert another code chunk. And now we're going to load in the YRBS data. And so we're going to YRBS 2013 data, assignment operator. Remember, you can manually type this. You can use an equal sign. I kind of prefer the arrow, but the equals will work in most cases. And remember, there's a hotkey to auto insert this, which is nice. And then we're going to use the same read SPSS command that we did in assignment 1. So read SPSS. Then we're going to use here data sets 2013 YRBS.sav. Make sure you put this .sav. If you're on like a Mac or even a Windows, sometimes your file extensions will be hidden from you, and so it will seem like that's not the name. But the file extension is part of the file name, so you need to include all of it. And it needs to exactly match the name of the data file in your datasets folder. So we can go ahead and run this. In this case, no news is good news. So it worked, and it didn't give us any output because all it did was assign this data set to this particular object. If we want to take a peek sees at it, we can YRBS. Oops. There we go. Lots of missing data here. That's what these NAs are. In SPSS, they would be dots, but in R, they're NAs. Remember, the other way we can take a peek at it if we don't like having that particular command, because when you knit, it's going to be really ugly, and so you'll want to comment this out. Your other option is you can highlight or select this particular object, press Command Enter, and it will do the same thing. It will just run this bit of code. It won't run the entire thing. However, if you don't highlight, if you just have your cursor somewhere on this line, and it can be anywhere, like it can be here, and it'll run that line, but it's not going to put any output because it's just saving this data file to this particular object. Well, we can take a look. We can scroll through. There's some things and stuff. This scrolls through the columns. This scrolls through rows. Notice that we have whole bunches of rows. So we have 114 columns, and so each column corresponds to a variable. And then we have 13,583 rows. Each row corresponds to a person. So basically each row is data from an individual. Okay, so for assignment, we'll go ahead and knit to make sure that everything's behaving okay. Because what's really annoying is writing a really long R Markdown file and having it not knit and not knowing where the problem is. So we know that it knits up until this point and it doesn't look stupid. That's fine. As a note, oftentimes this will pop up inline. If it's annoying, you can press these like double carets and make them go away. You can also pop it out into another window if you want a big window to look at, which is sometimes kind of nice. I'm going to make this go away for now. And we're going to start using sjplot to better look at this stuff. So another header. See, what do I have you guys call it? Variable view using sjplot. So the first thing we need to do is install sjplot. Now let's assume you've forgotten. If you try to load it, oh, I've installed this already. If I had not installed this, this would not have worked. So remember, you need to install packages, sjplot. Again, I'm not going to do it because I've already installed it. But you'll want to run this command and then comment it out. And then library sjplot. If you haven't noticed, every time you run a command here, it does pop up in the console along with the output. So it's sort of duplicating what you're doing. Library sjplot. Yeah, if you get some kind of message of like, hey, install some other stuff from GitHub, just ignore that. You don't need to do that. Okay, now we're going to make a new code chunk. Note that one should probably be commenting a little bit more. So you might, for instance, want to say library tidyverse package for data manipulation reads SPSS files, helps set relative file paths. And so that's if you're like, why did I load the Haven library? Well, it's because I need to read SPSS files. Okay. So now we're going to try to view our data in a nicer way using the libraries, some functions from the library sjplot. So we're going to type in IRBS. Notice that I did use lowercase letters because I knew it would autocomplete for me. So when this pops up, you can either press tab or I think enter will work. YRBS, enter also works. We're now going to do something a little bit new. We're going to pipe this data to a function. Oops. I changed my hotkey, and now I never remember what it is. So this is a pipe. It is a percentage, a caret, and another percentage sign. Piping is nice because what it does is it will take some object and it will kind of push it into a function of your choice. And so this should function the same as YRBS 2013 view df YRBS 2013. You can do this. You can also do this. It works exactly the same way. Learning to pipe now is nice because sometimes your arguments get a lot more complicated. So in this particular case, it's so trivial that you're like, why wouldn't you do this easier version? But later on, we'll do things that are a bit more complicated, and it is much, much nicer to know how to do piping so that you can string together a variety of commands. It looks nicer, it's easier to view. So that's why we're doing it. But functionally, piping is taking this object and putting it in here. And so it's doing the functional equivalent of this. So ViewDF is nice because it gives you this nice output for your data frame. If you want a bigger version of it, you can click Show in New Window, and it will pop up in your browser. And so this is a little bit nicer to look through. So ViewDF is nice because you can see a whole bunch of things about your data. And so you can actually, even at this point, start answering these questions of, from your assignment of what is the variable name and label? So not value labels for row 2. Row 2 is sex. The label, so not the value labels, but the label is 1 equals female, 2 equals male. So we can literally copy and paste. Copy and paste. And there we go. The next thing we can do, because right now we're sort of having to scroll all the way through all of these to find what we want. But maybe we don't know where a particular variable is, or we're lazy and don't feel like doing that. Something else that we can do, and you can do this as a new code chunk or as the same code chunk. It doesn't particularly matter. Sorry, that's my cat. We can use the attribute function to look at specific things in our data. So again, we can YRBS. Oops. I will do that a lot. Because again, my hotkey used to be something that now minimizes my window, so I had to change it, but I haven't changed my muscle memory for it. So we can use the attribute command. It's in base R. And then the first thing we're going to do is get label, which should match this. And actually skipped a bit. We want this for race 7 specifically. So we want the label for the variable named race 7. The $sign just grabs you that variable within a data set. So the label is a 7-level race variable. We can check this here. Here's the label column. Race 7 is a 7-level race variable. So you'll see they're doing the same thing. This just allows you to specifically get like the label for a variable that you want. We can do another version of this, but call labels. And yeah, it's a little bit silly that label and labels are so different, but that's how this function works. And so we can get the attribute labels. And now it's going to give us what the actual labels are, the value labels. So one, a code of 1 means American Indian / Alaskan Native. Code of 2 means Asian, Black, or African American. It's a little bit weird. But you can see here, isn't the nicest output, but it mimics what we're seeing here. So American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Black, American, Hispanic, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit off kilter. It's a little bit ugly, but it mostly works. So Asian, there we go. Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic, Latino, blah, blah, blah. Which means you can come back here. This one you can do the same as this one. Bum, bum, bum. And so at this point in the assignment, I basically have you use what you've already learned to answer the rest of these questions. So for instance, look at the values column for row 45. What's the value for a label of 1? You can just go here, go down to row 45, a value of 1 means 0 times. So that becomes your answer. You can also use this attribute function to find a list of value labels for this particular thing. This might actually be a typo. I'll go ahead and fix this. I think it's Q hallustrug, but we can actually find that out. If you're not sure, you can go back to your data file, press the $sign. It will give you a list of every variable in this thing. And so if you type A, you don't really get an A, but you do get this Q hallustrug. And you can then do the attribute label ever used LSD labels, and here's all of your labels. So you should be able to use these commands over and over for basically the rest of this assignment. This I've actually already told you what it means, but the answer is in your assignment, and then you'll upload your knitted assignment to Word file here. So hopefully this helps as well. Again, I know it's a little bit long and meandering, but this is how you would go through assignment 2.